Start with breaking news this morning on a major shake-up to the media landscape, with Nine and Fairfax agreeing to merge, forming what will be the country's biggest media company. Under the plan, the combined business will include Nine's free-to-air television network, Stan and 9Now, along with Fairfax mastheads and Macquarie Media radio stations, including 2GB and 3AW.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch and to the biggest media shake-up in 3 decades. Fairfax Media, publisher of The Age, Sydney Morning Herald, Canberra Times and around 160 regional papers, has sold up after years of savage job cuts and gut-wrenching reforms. That it's selling out to Nine is no great surprise, although Seven was also kicking the tyres. But what is shocking is that after 177 years, as its arch-rival gleefully reported, the famous Fairfax name will go.
The day Fairfax died.
And while the new group, to be known as Nine, is being touted as a powerful new competitor for Facebook and Google, the reality of this deal, if it goes through, is that it's all about survival in a brave new digital world. Or as media analyst Peter Cox joked,
"These are what we call legacy companies, dinosaurs. Why would 2 dinosaurs want to mate?"
Yet, naturally, that wasn't the message on Nine, where it was lights, camera, action, as Ross Greenwood spruiked the exciting future that now lies ahead.
It means you've got some of the hottest digital properties in the country, all together on the one platform.
And on Fairfax-owned 2GB, again with Nine's Ross Greenwood, the message from the two CEOs was just as upbeat and just as focused on real estate and streaming services, which is where that future lies.
The old rivers of gold that used to be the print publications and now the digital rivers of gold.
The ability to leverage the great audiences that we have and the marketing inventory that we have to grow Stan, to grow Domain, as we have done within a publishing context, but to broaden that out into TV is something that everyone will benefit from.
But Fairfax reporters, past and present, were not so sure that being owned by Nine, whose idea of quality journalism is Today, A Current Affair and 60 Minutes, is such good news.
I've worked for both Nine and Fairfax. Hang on to your hats, Fairfax people. You're in for a wild ride and very different culture.
So after 150 plus years, this is all we get. I would like to thank everyone for their contribution to Fairfax.
Nine's takeover, and that's what it is, since Nine will be in charge, was made possible by the repeal of Australia's cross-media laws last September. And Communications Minister Mitch Fifield was keen to take the credit.
Our changes to media law are giving the opportunity for Australian media organisations to look at how they can make themselves the strongest they can be.
And the Prime Minister also welcomed the deal.
I used to work for the Nine network in the past, in my journalistic and legal past, and I think bringing them together will strengthen both of them.
The former Labor PM, Paul Keating, who designed the media laws that the Turnbull government has scrapped and has had a grudge against Nine for years, branded it an exceptionally bad development. And on the ABC's 7:30, he continued his attack.
Look, Channel 9, I said, there's been no moral compass in the guidance of its news management ever. Foot in the door journalism, checkbook journalism, you name it, they've been in it. You know, it's a tabloid outfit from go to woe. You know.
Eric Beecher, a former editor of the Sydney Morning Herald, was also scathing, describing it in crikey as
a merger deal that has nothing to do with journalism and everything to do with money.
And Beecher was just one of many critics. Former Sunday Age editor Andrew Jaspin also slammed the takeover as not just sad, it is bad. While a former editor of The Age, Bruce Guthrie, branded it bad for journalism and bad for democracy. And former Nine business reporter and Fairfax columnist Michael Pascoe called the deal a crock and pathetic. Yet, none of this was reported by Nine Online, which told readers
Nine Chief Executive Hugh Marks said the move was good for journalism in Australia.
So, will it really be good? And why has it happened? Well, to be brutal, it may just be necessary, because print and TV are both sick or dying businesses. Sales of Fairfax's flagship papers, The Age and Sydney Morning Herald, have fallen by almost 2/3 in the last 10 years. But audiences in TV are deserting too, down by 1/4 since 2010, and the fall is gathering pace. In the last 2 months, Nine's glossy reality shows like The Voice, that once pulled in 1.4 million viewers, and Ninja Warrior, that once had almost 1.7 million, have failed to crack the million mark. And drama has been even more disappointing. So, how will a merger help? Well, the new deal promises $50 million in synergies or savings. But here's the rub. That's not much for a $4 billion business. And while there will be cuts in back-office functions, former Age editor Bruce Guthrie also reckons it will almost certainly lead to more job losses in newsrooms. You'd expect cuts in the Canberra Bureau, where Nine and Fairfax have 26 journalists between them, and at Macquarie Radio, which could in future get its news from Nine. And more pain is likely for Fairfax's 160 regional papers, in which Nine has little or no interest. Indeed, former Sydney Morning Herald editor Darren Goodser reckons they could be cut loose.
The revenue pressures that have descended on Fairfax at the metropolitan level are only more acutely felt in the regional and rural centres, and the cuts have been swinging over the last 10 years or so. I think this is one to watch really closely.
But those are not the only changes we're likely to see. Nine and Fairfax hope growth will come from driving customers to their profitable digital brands, Stan and Domain. So expect journalism to take a back seat to make room for shameless cross-promotion, like a TV programme on Domain, or property puffs in Nine's Today, A Current Affair, or even Nine News. And be prepared for wraparound stories in the Herald, or more website plugs for The Block, or Love Island, which is Hugh Marks's favourite programme. Is that a worry? Well, yes, it is. Earlier this year, we showed how Nine risked its credibility as a trusted news source by running puff pieces for sponsor Officeworks in its afternoon news bulletins. And one ex-commercial TV news director told us gloomily, this is the new normal.
There has been pressure for years, but now it's worse than ever. The one sacrosanct place was news. But what we see now is the rise and power of the network programmers. It's been a political battle for years, and now they have won.
And here is another worry. Will Fairfax still run critical stories about Nine's stars, like this one on Carl and Peter Stefanovic's Uber upset, or this one on the infamous 60 Minutes bungle in Beirut, or this one exposing the disgrace of Don Burke? And how will Nine react if Fairfax journalists lay into Nine's big advertisers, like Coles, Toyota or KFC? CEO Hugh Marks was asked about that on the ABC's 7:30.
There wouldn't be a climate in the organisation that said, you know what, they're a pretty major sponsor of 60 Minutes, we'd best leave that story alone.
Our audience would smell that a mile off. And if we start...
Would they?
Yeah, they would. They would smell that because they would know that other organisations might be pursuing a story that we're not as an organisation, and I think that goes to your reputation.
And yet, as Media Watch viewers may remember, Nine did fail to cover a big class action against one of its major sponsors, Scenic Cruises, that other media were covering 2 years ago. To be fair, Nine has invested heavily in news in recent years, including regional news, and its reputation is generally good. But the fact that it won't give its flagship programme 60 Minutes a regular time slot says heaps about its priorities. And that brings us to a final consequence of this deal, which is that it will surely kill off collaborations between the ABC and Fairfax, like Adele Ferguson's award-winning Four Corners on the Commonwealth Bank that helped lead to the Banking Royal Commission. It's hard to see 60 Minutes or A Current Affair taking that job over. And that's something that all Australians, and not just ABC viewers, will miss. All in all, we reckon this takeover will not be good for journalism, or indeed for media diversity. And it will be even worse if it sets off a wave of media mergers, as some predict. And having digested all that, if you need an example of why media diversity is important, let's take a look at what happened with reporting of this story last week.
The company behind the group discount website One Big Switch has had to pay more than $25,000 in penalties after an ACCC investigation. 2 infringement notices were issued for false and misleading practice. One Big Switch advertised a 27% discount for consumers in southeast Queensland, but the consumer watchdog ruled Big Switch could not know a person's current plan and therefore couldn't estimate the savings.
Last Monday, news broke that group discount website One Big Switch had been fined $25,000 for misleading conduct. With the story running on the ABC...
One Big Switch hit with fine for misleading customers.
In the Fairfax papers and on sites such as the New Daily, Mumbrella and Gizmodo. But over at News Corp, where consumer yarns usually get a good run, the story was strangely absent. The only mention was this very short AAP copy found buried in news.com.au. So, why would this story be ignored? Well, probably because One Big Switch is part-owned and tirelessly promoted by News Corp. In the past 3 years, the One Big Switch campaign has featured in at least 200 stories across News Corp's main mastheads. But it seems there was no room for this one. And not for the first time either. Back in 2015, when ASIC gave One Big Switch a rap over the knuckles for potentially misleading advertising, the story again went missing in the News Corp papers. Funny, eh? Let's hope we don't get the same blindness at 9 if Domain gets itself into strife. But now, time for another quiz on the pitfalls of independent journalism. And it's a hard one. What do these two things have in common?
Greed.
Taking money for no service is essentially theft.
Lies.
Misleading the regulator. It was absolutely stunning.
And the trashing of an Australian icon.
Give up? Yeah, I thought you would. Well, this breathtaking footage of Sydney's New Year's Eve fireworks is shot from the AMP building at Circular Quay, where a camera and relay equipment are set up. And take a long look, because after 5 years of broadcasting from the location, as of this year, it will be no more. And could that be something to do with these other fireworks from last week's Four Corners?
Taking money for no service is essentially theft. It would be regarded as theft in any other walk of life.
And this.
The AMP clients were being charged every month automatically and not receiving a red razoo.
Last Monday's Four Corners shone an unflattering spotlight on some shocking corporate behaviour at AMP over many years, which came to light in the Royal Commission. It was a damning report that exposed fraud and misconduct at the highest levels. And it looks suspiciously like AMP has taken revenge. Because on the day after the programme went to air, the ABC were told by email that the AMP balcony would not be available for the ABC to use this New Year's Eve. And it signed off,
"Good luck with finding an alternative solution."
Now, we can't say the two are definitely linked, and AMP assures us they are not, telling MediaWatch,
AMP would be using the space for the next 2 years. This is why we declined the ABC request.
But as they say, what a coincidence. And in the meantime, does anyone have a balcony the ABC could use? And finally, let's say farewell. A goodbye to one of Australia's national news treasures.
As we approach the end of this evening's news, my final bulletin on SBS, I take my leave with sadness. I'm saddest of all to leave you, the audience. Thank you for watching, and a very good night.
Yes, Lin Chin left SBS yesterday after presenting the news for nearly 30 years. She told 10's Sandra Sully,
There's many small to medium-sized reasons, which for the time being I wish to keep to myself. One reason I shall reveal, however, is that working 2 days a week didn't give me enough time to devote to the pub and rereading the complete works of Shakespeare. So now that I work 0 days, that issue has been addressed.
Chin presented the weekend news bulletin with a certain exotic style that won her many admirers. But recently she discovered she had a talent for comedy too.
You know, people often come up to me and ask,
"Oh my God, Lin Chin, how do you keep such a trim figure?"
And then I maze them for assuming they have the right to speak to me.
This Lin Chin comedy character became a hit, with many of her colleagues wanting in on the joke.
I'm about to retract Lin's teeth from her face.
3 against 1. My kind of odds. Forgetting someone? Channel 10 News?
And she gained plenty of followers with tweets like this.
Guess I'll celebrate 300 followers with a threesome then.
As well as for her fashion style. So, Lin Chin, thank you for keeping us entertained and informed. You might have missed out on a gold logie in 2016, but you have our vote. And there's more about tonight's stories on our Facebook page or our website, where you can read full statements from AMP and News Corp. And don't forget, Media Bites every Thursday. But for now, until next week, that's it from us. Goodbye.